Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll need to take a verbal roll call before we get started. Commissioner Hemmer?
Here.
Commissioner Bergeron?
Here.
Commissioner Weiner?
Here.
Morning, fellow commissioners. In just a little bit, we'll be taking public calls for all agenda items. Members of the public wishing to speak on matters posted for public comment time may call the following number, 629-255-1939. That number is 629-255-1939, and we'll circle back in just a moment to see if we have anyone on the line. Before we get started, we need to address this being a virtual meeting, so I move that the proposed agenda constitutes essential business and meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and well-beings of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. We'll take a roll call vote. Oh, I guess I need a second. Sorry.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Hemmer?
Aye.
Commissioner Bergeron?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiner?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. With that, we can officially call the meeting to order. Welcome to the April 2021 Fair Board meeting. Next up, I'll read our legal notice as information for our audience. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Board of Fair Commissioners today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. First up, we need to approve last minute's meetings that were circulated to the board. If everyone wants to take a moment to look these over and let me know if there's a motion.
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Hammer, a second.
Great. Any discussion? All right, then we'll take a vote. Commissioner Hemmer?
Commissioner Hammer, aye.
Commissioner Bergeron?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiner?
Aye.
I am aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to open the floor for public comment. For members of the public wishing to call in, I'm going to read that number again in case anyone missed it. If you'd like to make a comment, please call us at 629-255-1939. And as a reminder, according to our bylaws, each caller has 2 minutes to speak, and we're going to cap public comment time at 15 minutes total. As always, please feel free to, if you don't get to speak today, please call or email us, commissioners. Our inboxes are open. And then Laura, do you want to help me keep an eye on the time?
Sure thing.
Awesome, thank you. And then Allison, are you there? I don't know who's in charge of the public call-in line today.
Chairman McAnally, this is Christy. We have we have about 7 callers on the line. So we'll put your first call through.
Perfect. Thank you, Christy.
Good morning. I think I'm on the line. My name is Tanner Martin.
Thanks for calling in. Just if you could identify yourself and state your address, please.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Tanner Martin. I live at Southern Turf Drive, right south of the Fairgrounds. I spoke with you guys last week. I've actually spoken to a fair number of folks on this call individually, so I appreciate your time again this morning. I wanted to do this in a public forum. Calling once again to speak out against the expansion of the Speedway to include NASCAR events. Since our last Fair Board meeting, the Speedway has gotten back up and running, which is a nice little reminder of the level of noise that permeates the neighborhood during racing season. Since the beginning of this month, if my math is right, I believe there have been 4 track rentals, and then there's a Saturday practice session last week. We have a full race schedule coming up this upcoming weekend. This is all within the parameters as outlined in the existing lease, but just a reminder of the nuisance that our neighbors bear based on the Speedway. Bristol's proposal to bring NASCAR level noise for up to 4 weeks per year is an exponential increase in the noise pollution coming from the track. NASCAR cars are not subject to the same muffler and sound standards that the current track promoters implement. The cars top out at about 140 decibels. No, I don't think that any noise mitigation or sound barrier can really trap that level of noise. When we've spoken with Bristol in the past month, they've been pretty vague when they're pressed on this issue. I don't think highway noise barriers really meet that standard. Population density surrounding the fairgrounds is 200 times greater than any other BMS run track. NASCAR simply just does not fit in a city and will affect people from the fairgrounds all the way to Vanderbilt and downtown. Again, to reiterate the same point that I made last month, this is not local racing. You're adding to an already saturated and full local racing schedule, and it's being borne by the citizens surrounding. I mean, honestly, the fact that as a citizen we have to fight for peace and quiet in our neighborhood says a lot about Metro government, and not in a good way. We're sacrificing the quality of life of our citizens to enrich wealthy promoters who don't live here and certainly don't live anywhere near this track, and for good reason. We've created a pretty perverse incentive wherein the fairgrounds must generate a profit. I get that, but the only way to generate a profit is to disrupt the lives of our citizens who pay pretty hefty tax bills to the city. It's not really fair. I know that we talk a lot about community impact, and that's a part of this agenda today, but I believe the actions tell a different story. Take the end of last year, for example. We fit almost an entire racing season into the back half of the year due to COVID, understandable. It ended in November. On top of that, we booked for an event that had thunderous bass and lights that ran literally.
We're at 2 minutes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Please don't consider this proposal. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tanner. Christy, whenever you're ready with the next caller.
Chairman McAnally, your caller's on the line.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, caller. Thank you for calling us. Please identify yourself and state your address, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, yes, my name is Andrea Genopoli, and I live at 1006 Caldwell Avenue, and that's near 12th and Wedgwood, which is about 2 miles from the track. And I will say that when I bought my house, at that time it was looking like that track was going to close, so I felt pretty comfortable. Now, the sound from the track is like having a buzz saw in your head all day and into the night. We've canceled engagements. We pretty much try to leave the neighborhood when that's happening. It's hard. It's really hard to live with that. It's a constant whirring sound. Every time it happens, people on next door are like, what's that sound? When they move into the neighborhood, it's awful. I'm hoping that the Metro government will start closing that track, realizing that it doesn't fit the city anymore. Okay, so it is shocking to me that they want to add more and louder cars. I feel that Bristol and these guys, and I've seen them all, they're frustrated that they don't own the Speedway or have any part of the Speedway track near Lebanon, which is a more appropriate place for a track. I think the city is growing fast, and I'm hoping that the city planners and the commission and the council, I think that they think that the city council and the planners are naive. And I hope you will show them that you are not naive. All of the racetracks that I researched are not near residential neighborhoods or in the middle of any town. I've gone to racetracks. Part of the enjoyment is the drive out there. Okay, so the Bristol reps don't even live here. I would offer them to move their family and their children and live in the neighborhood closest to the track. The city is growing, and we need to think ahead. Don't let these Bristol guys take advantage of the city and its residents. Bristol say they want to be good neighbors, but let's be realistic. I don't know any neighbor that would put a track next to my home. So I say to them, and I'm sure, listen, I say to them, take your loud cars, your briefcases, your sneaky ideas, and your bad ideas, and go home. Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling in. Christy, whenever you're ready.
Chairman McAnally, your caller's on the line.
Thank you. Thanks for calling in. Good morning. Could you please identify yourself and state your address? And you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kristen Sullivan, and I live at 516 Southgate Avenue. We recently relocated here, and I just wanted to call in about the proposed racetrack expansion, not only as a homeowner in the community, but as someone who actually is getting involved in the local school, which is less than a quarter of a mile away from the racetrack. And I know that there's no plan to operate the racetrack during school hours, but I am really concerned about what happens after school hours for these kids who live in an underserved community. What happens to tutoring sessions and parent-teacher conferences and after-school activities, and any of the things that go into making a great school when school is not actually in session. And I think that if this racetrack was near any other school, if it was near a private school or a predominantly white school, that this would never be happening. And I think it's really tragic that we would not take into consideration this community of young kids who are at this school who need things outside of school hours from their school community. And I think that the racetrack operating 365 days a year, even if it starts at 4 o'clock, could be detrimental to the future of those children.
Thank you so much for calling in. Christy, whenever you're ready.
Chairman, your caller's on the line.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Please identify yourself, state your address, and you have 2 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to share some thoughts. My name is Shay Staff, and I live at 151 Rains, so basically the corner of Rains and Southgate. And I've lived in the neighborhood about 2 years now, tried to get involved in various aspects, even joined the board of staff. So I've met a lot of neighbors, tried to gauge kind of the feel for the racetrack expansion or renovation. And I've reached out mostly to neighbors on Rains, and when I asked them if they've heard about it, the plans, they say no. And then kind of when I ask them, like, yeah, they're trying to renovate and hold some NASCAR level events there, a lot of them just don't think that that's really going to happen. And I know it's a possibility. And the reaction I get is mostly kind of disbelief or even concern once they kind of realize what that means. And so I just wanted to reach out and kind of just share the concern that I've been getting from others and that I share with them as well. And I feel like the noise that we get now from the practices or whatever takes place there, it's infrequent enough and at the level where you kind of learn to deal with it. But the new agreement that's looking to go through, I don't think it's going to be something that you just kind of live with. And I think it's going to really change the dynamic of the neighborhood. And so the population density of this area and the agreement that's looking to take place, I think, is just not going to fit with the surrounding area here. I am willing to say that limited number of events, certain times, certain manner, you could have some larger racing events and maybe really utilize the track to what the BMS might think. But I think that the city and BMS and the community are just on 3 separate pages here at the moment, and it really gives me great concern. I think that there needs to be open, transparent discussion, and we need to establish limits to what this is going to look like going forward in the future. And the people who it's going to affect the most directly need
2 minutes.
And so that's all. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my thoughts.
Thank you so much for calling in. Christy, whenever you're ready.
Chairman, your caller is on the line.
Great, thank you. Good morning, and thanks for calling in. If you could please identify yourself and state your address. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, good morning, Fair Board. My name is Laura Flaherty, and I live at 424 Windgrove Avenue in Wedgwood, Houston. Thank you for taking the time to hear from the community on this today. I'm calling this morning to urge you to reconsider the proposed racetrack expansion. It seems to have come out of nowhere extremely quickly with very little opportunity for community input. An expansion will have an immeasurable impact on the surrounding residential neighborhoods. And my main concern is that it's being proposed at a time that we are already right in the middle of construction on a major project at Fairgrounds property with the MLS stadium. And the residents in this neighborhood are already going to be impacted in increased traffic and possible noise to a degree that we can't be really certain of until that stadium opens. So to add another project on top of that, another expansion, the more use in that neighborhood already, it just seems like a lot all at once. So what I'm requesting at this time is more discussion and opportunity for public comment, as well as assurances from the future racetrack operators that impact on the surrounding residential neighborhoods will be minimal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for calling in. Christy, whenever you're ready.
Chairman McNally, your caller's on the line.
Great, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for calling in. Could you please identify yourself and state your address? And you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Brooke Wilson. My address is 518A Southgate Avenue, Nashville. I have a very strong concern for the expansion of the Motor Speedway in the Wedgewood Houston neighborhood and neighboring communities. As a residential certified appraiser, the noise and traffic from the expansion will diminish and destroy the livelihood and property values of the surrounding homes and those located in the burgeoning WeHo neighborhood and nearby neighbors. Please take the time to responsibly consider and care for your Nashville neighbors. These improvements could devastate a great number of families. Additionally, the track and carbon emissions is harmful. Please support responsibility to the families and the environment. Please vote to do something more community friendly with the Fairgrounds Speedway. Thank you for your time. The community really appreciates your consideration of their safety and their values and their livelihoods and well-being.
Thank you very much for calling in. Christy, how many callers do we have on the line?
Chairman, we've had a few more callers to add, so I want to say about 9 more.
Okay. Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we might only have time for a couple more on this.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I had originally thought that the first 7.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe 2 more. And just to anybody that's on the line that doesn't make it, just so you know, in just a little bit, we're going to be discussing public engagement. So there'll be more information about that. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities to share with us your opinion in public. But you can also, like I said, always email or call us as well.
Chairman McAnally, a question: is there some time limit we're running into here? I don't remember us limiting public comment before.
It's in our bylaws. We have, since we changed our bylaws, we've kept to this.
Okay. I just wonder: is there a way that Christy maybe could collect comments from, or do a little bit more firmer engagement with the folks who are still on the line to make sure that those are recorded and get to us?
Sure. Yeah. Or, like I said, they're also welcome to reach out to us as a board as well. I'm just trying to stick to our bylaws at this point and let everyone know that there's going to be open public comment time next month, and that we're not going to limit any. We'll have no time constrictions then.
Chairman, your next caller is on the line.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much for calling in. If you could please identify yourself and state your address, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, this is Heidi in Wedgewood, Houston. I live on Mill Terrace. I am calling to express that I'm against this proposal of the Speedway expansion because of the pace. Community engagement followed by agreeing to actual protections and concrete event limits must happen, not just a box check for public meetings. This expansion proposed is a lot more activity and therefore needs a CBA and concrete protection because it affects all of Nashvillians, not just Wedgwood Houston. No deal should be signed, in fact, until the soccer stadium is operating so that the city and Fairgrounds can truly see how it goes. There are too many unanswered questions: lack of parking, lack of infrastructure surrounding the property. During one night of the fair last year, my neighbors on my street could literally not leave their homes. Given the schedule for the Fairgrounds, MLS, and NASCAR, this would happen many times a week and impact all of us for miles. Our group, Note Nashville, met with BMS, and we are really grateful for their time. Thank you for that. But it's clear that there are still not specifics, not even about sound mitigation. This isn't a highway or a train or city sound. It's NASCAR. The mayor and the city need to also ask why it doesn't align with the mayor's carbon emissions reduction plan, why the city is allowing racing still 900 feet away from a school. But most shocking, from a mayor that touts fiscal responsibility, BMS will get a lease for 30 years, but each contract is only for 10. That means at 10 years, they can walk away. Once again, the city and the Fair Board would be stuck holding the bill, desperately trying to fill seats to repay this debt, just like they did when NASCAR left in the 80s. Does this expansion need to happen? Could we not improve the track without getting stuck in a 30-year commitment? That way, the Fair Board could determine the size and scope appropriate for the area and more flexibility in the future. The mayor has completely abandoned his campaign promises. He is not for neighbors. He lied. So the burden falls on the Fair Board. It won't be easy, but you've got to do what is right for the people, not for the mayor event promoters. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in, Heidi.
Bye.
Bye. Christy, whenever you're ready for the last call.
Chairman McAnally, your caller is on the line.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for calling in. If you could please identify yourself and state your address, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kate Klaus. My address is 540C Moore Avenue. I've lived there for 7 years. I'm a homeowner. And my concerns with the racetrack expansion are related to quality of life in our neighborhood, including increased noise. Sorry, like what I hear right now. Increased noise, increased traffic, and increased pollution. And I'm also really concerned at how this racetrack expansion, and particularly a NASCAR invitation, is being moved forward without any input from members of the community, particularly the Wedgwood, Houston, and the Vine Hill neighborhoods. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that we're gonna close public comment time now. Jason, do you have specific request of Christy with the remaining callers?
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I just, if they want to leave their comments in a way that's more directly forwarded, I understand there are other ways. I need to take a look at the bylaws too. I'm not terribly comfortable with cutting folks off. I just need to take a look at that and see if maybe we need to propose something of that. I mean, we listened to a lot of comments from a lot of people in red T-shirts about soccer and sat for a long time. So that just makes me uncomfortable. So hopefully we can. As you said, next meeting we'll have more opportunity. So that'll be good.
Yes, I think that we differentiated in our bylaws between our regular meetings and public comment and then actual public input meetings based on I think past experiences. So that if you remember when we put the bylaws together, that was part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Right. No. I understand. I get it. I'm just saying I'm thinking about that. No,
sure. I absolutely want to hear everything that everyone that's on the line has to say 100% and look forward to those opportunities. Right, moving on. Next up, we have financial report from Satrice. Satrice, you can take it from here.
Good morning, everyone. The information presented today is preliminary, and our revenue and expenses for March 2021 may not have been recorded to the ledgers as of April 8, 2021, when this report was created. The preliminary actuals through March 2021 are as follows. Revenues through March are $350,222. Expenditures are around $1,693,420, resulting in a net loss of approximately $1,343,200. Depreciation expense is $951,331, so the total net loss is roughly $2,294,529. Below you will find an itemized list of our expenditures. Our top three expenses are payroll, utilities, and insurance/LOCAP. Payroll expense is approximately $897,948, which represents 53% of our total expenses. Utilities expense is $334,594, which is 20%. Insurance, permits, and LOCAP expense is $279,283, which is 16% of our total expenses. I would like to mention that we have been approved by council to receive a subsidy of approximately $2.1 million to help cover our expenses for this fiscal year due to our inability to hold indoor events and limited outdoor events since mid-March 2020 and functioning as an emergency shelter in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This concludes our financial report. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Satrice? Okay, thank you so much, Satrice. We'll move on then to Executive Director's report. Laura?
Thank you, everyone. Laura Womack. I just have two brief things. I know everybody has been really anxious, both vendors and customers alike, about when we will resume the flea market. We are working on an application right now, should be in by the end of today, to the health department for an outdoor-only flea market. Our goal date is the 4th weekend in May to have that outdoor market. It will definitely be modified to keep within the new capacity requirements that the health department is published. So we will continue to work with them for a safe outdoor event. And the other exciting thing is we have been working pretty diligently to get all the approvals needed and for a new software, a vendor and event management software system. That work has concluded, and we will be pushing forward with getting that conversion done by the time we reopen for public, for indoor events. So we're really excited about that. It will actually bring us up to, use of today's technology. We've been kind of held back by the limitations of our current system, and there's a lot of advantages to using a subscription cloud-based service. It will provide more functionality to us and to our clients if they choose. We'll also offer online payment and credit card processing much easier. I know that we have talked in the past about possibly utilizing debit or credit card payments for parking. That functionality will exist. So we're just kind of working through some of those details, but we're really excited about that. It's going to be quite the transition, as you can imagine, with converting an entire management software, but I think this is a good time, and we'll be able to have that in place by the time we reopen for indoor events.
That's great news. Anyone have any questions for Laura? Okay, then we will move on to old business. First up is shelter update. I believe we have Chief Swan with us. Laura?
Yes, Director Chief Swan should be on the call.
Christy, do you know if he's here? I'm not seeing him on the call.
I'm not either. I did talk to him or touch base with him this morning. If you want to move on to the next, I'll see if I can get in touch with him.
Okay, great. We'll circle back to shelter update then. Then we'll move on to Fairgrounds improvement update. Mr. Henley?
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Chairman McAnally. Good morning, board, council, staff. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Just doing, I missed sound checks. So I want to make sure before I give a long speech, everyone can hear me all right.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, the board should have available to them a budget dashboard that's been updated through the end of March. Again, always want to be clear that what's presented in those figures is anywhere between 30 to 45 days in arrear. In this case, and for this month, very little movement occurred. A grand total of about $20,000 was expended. So you will likely see no movement in any of the percentages just because that dollar amount was so small. But I am happy to answer any questions in particular. But what I will do with my time is to just give updates on things that have happened, I would say more behind the scenes and administratively. First and foremost, for the most active or current project, we are still waiting on permitting for the multi-purpose and maintenance building. What we have done is release some funds to allow our contractor to place deposits and secure materials for construction once permitting is completed. So that movement has happened. That was about $6,000 of the funds that were released during the month of March. Other activities that are included, a lot of work has gone to close out purchase orders for Skanska, who was our construction manager for the new expo buildings, but also all of the other vendors that have taken place or have done work on the site to this point. So we've been working to unencumber funds, particularly through reduction of purchase orders. We've also been reconciling all financials associated with those vendors. Really in the process of closeout related to the majority of the projects that have occurred. I wanted to give great recognition to Satrice, who has spent a lot of time, of course, managing operation costs, but has also worked closely with me as we go through and are chasing down, dollars and pennies on a regular basis, making sure that everything is tidy. And so we've continued to do that over the past 30, 45 days. And I would like to recognize Roxanne Bethune and her work. Alliance Synergy Group has been reaching out to diverse and disadvantaged business entities that were subcontractors of Skanska, as well as Atkinson Associates, which was our design engineering lead, to ensure that the appropriate calculations for the payments to date are reflected. And she's also been in communication with the Business Assistance Office regarding those efforts as well. Again, I mentioned that only about $20,000 of movement had occurred in the Fairgrounds improvement projects. Also wanted to address the funds that were set aside and allocated for the Fair Park. There was no movement there either. So the dashboards look fairly similar to what you saw last month, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Henley?
There aren't any. I will pass the baton and the mic to Ron. I believe he wants to address an update on infrastructure.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, just to kind of supplement what Ed was saying, the multipurpose building, we have ordered the steel. It should be in the middle of the summer, and we're trying to work everything around that. The infrastructure project is still in the permitting phase. There's a public comment. The state has a public comment related to the bridge over Browns Creek. That's closing later this week, and then hopefully we'll get that permit and we can get that moving a little quicker. The construction company, has set up their job trailer and is doing a lot of work around the edges of this project, getting it ready to go. And we're beginning to coordinate with mixed use and other projects that are on the campus. So are there any questions? Okay. Madam Chair, I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Ron. Next up, we have MLS Stadium and Infrastructure Update, and we'll hear from Mrs. Kavara.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and let me share my screen. We've got a couple of updates here. Let's see if we can, sorry, trying to get to the right one. My name is Mary Kavara. I'm here today on behalf of Nashville SC. I'll provide a brief update on the stadium and the team. 9 months into the construction phase, I'm pleased to report that the stadium construction continues to move ahead as scheduled and with a very strong safety record. In addition, the DBE participation remains at approximately 36%, and we're very proud of the work that Mortensen and others have done in focusing to make sure that we exceeded our commitment of 30%. This slide is a view looking to the south end of the stadium. You could see the progress made on the steelwork, including the upper bowl rakers, which are now in place with some of the precast, which will be the seats for the upper bowl. And the beginning of the premium stack is on the west side there. On the next slide, which the orientation is to downtown, you could see the work on the lower seating bowl is just about complete. And this overhead view also provides information where you can see the width of the concourses, which should work well with our 30,000 seating capacity. And then at the south end, you could see the steel work that's now in place, as well as below that, the south stack where the locker rooms, storage, commissary, and other areas will be. And on this next slide, these are just some additional views of the steel rakers, the lower bowl seating, and some of the south stack areas that I mentioned as they're beginning to actually take shape. Looking ahead, the canopy work will start in May through September with the target of clearing the pitch in November to begin to prep for the natural grass field. And I'll put in one quick plug for the team. As a reminder, our season opening match will be on April 17th at Nissan Stadium against FC Cincinnati. We're excited to get back on the pitch and our fans are looking forward to continuing the rivalry. I will pause here and I'm pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mary? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mary. Before we move on, do we have Chief Swan with us yet?
It should be really quick. We resent the login information, so he should be on very quickly.
Okay. Should we move on to the next agenda item and then circle back, you think?
Yes, let's go ahead.
Okay, great, but we will circle back with him after. All right, so we will move on now to Bristol Motor Speedway update. We have Jerry Caldwell here with us from Bristol, as well as Tom Cross from Metro Legal. Jerry's going to take some time to speak to us, and then we can ask questions of him, or if we have any questions of Metro, we can also address those. And then we can discuss our tentative plan and schedule for public engagement after that. So Jerry, if you want to take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Hope you're having a great day today. To provide an update today following our letter of intent and been working alongside Mayor Cooper and the Metro team to get a deal done that we continue to focus on that offers a economically viable plan for Fairgrounds Speedway and is focused on a few areas right now. Number one of those being community engagement. Number two being facilities planning. Our update this morning is going to provide you some progress on those. But first, though, I want to reemphasize the opportunity that we have on the table with a shared vision with Mayor Cooper and Bristol Motor Speedway. And that's really a restoration of one of the most historic and revered motorsports venues in the world that reestablishes it as a fairgrounds landmark and saves a Nashville landmark that's been operating continually since the early 1900s. our focus is a shift of that substantial financial risk of the Speedway operations away from Metro taxpayers to a team of professionalized operation that gives a facility a viable future, and a long-term plan that enables the Fair Board and the city to deliver a truly comprehensive renovation and revival of the fairgrounds as a whole. These are all tremendous wins for the fairgrounds and the community. As for community engagement, and Madam Chair, I know you're going to provide more of an update or more of a conversation on that. I'll touch on some of the community outreach right now. We are well into the process of engaging more than 30 neighborhood and stakeholder groups in the fairgrounds area. Some of those conversations have started, as were mentioned earlier. Others are scheduled for the upcoming sessions, and we're in the process of scheduling those meetings. There you go. You will notice that a lot of those groups here are very familiar to you. And Councilman Sledge and others have been very helpful in helping us make contact and get moving on those informational sessions. We're doing a lot of listening and gathering input and have had a lot of very positive conversations, and appreciate the information that's being provided. Several key issues have emerged that are worth relaying. We realize there is quite a bit of misinformation out there. Number one of those, our presence does not mean more racing. We will not, in our conversations with the Fair Board, and are willing to make strong concrete commitments that this does not mean an increase in the number of racing events. It does mean that there will be some different racing, better racing. One of the most significant changes that we're discussing is really just one weekend in hosting a major NASCAR event. The other racing events that would be hosted are very similar to the racing events that are currently being hosted. We can generate substantial economic impact for the city with those events and with the way those would be running. Again, currently the contract calls for, as I understand it, 10 motorsports events and 25 test dates. That's what's in the current agreement. Our current conversations around those number of dates would be no more of those dates and probably a reduction in those test dates. We do look forward to continuing those conversations and making sure, again, that we make concrete limits on the number of racing events that would be in place. Our presence does not mean huge fan events, more so than what's already there. A 30,000 seat capacity for the Fairgrounds Speedway is equal to the facility, the MLS stadium that is already there, and would be one of the smallest racing venues in the country. We can generate more revenue from non-racing events that relaxes the pressure on taxpayers. Our plan for the Speedway would prioritize private revenue generating non-racing activities and events. Today, the Fairgrounds Speedway is an underperforming asset that leaves taxpayers with a financial risk. By giving the Speedway more use for non-race events, we can create revenue that can be shared with the city. These conversations have also produced some ideas with intriguing community partnerships around education and other areas, and we look forward to disclosing more of that information as those community partnerships come together. We will be doing the Fair Board scheduled sessions at Music City Center again that will be discussed later, and have begun amassing a frequently asked questions document that we will be sharing very soon in a variety of ways, website, fresh illustrations of the track, and others. And then on the facility planning front, we've begun meeting regularly with Mr. Sturdivant and Mr. Gobble and their teams to refine facilities planning. This is a work in progress and will be done exclusively within the footprint. The next slide I'll show you will give you an idea of kind of those conversations. As we've committed, the changes will improve the structural integrity of these very old grandstands, the track surface, modernize safety standards, as well as bring state-of-the-art update for more noise mitigation so that we can make sure we reduce the impact to the neighborhood and the community. Another subject in some of our conversations is the impact on Fair Park. The improvements will not impact Fair Park. The spectator area constructed adjacent to Craighead Street access road will not require any more encroachment outside of that road that is being proposed. So I am happy to answer any questions. That would conclude my update for today.
Okay, great. Board, are there any questions for Jerry?
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I have some questions.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Caldwell, you talked a little bit about events and you recognize that the 10 current events. I've heard at least one instance where it was reported to me that you may have said that the events actually are going to be 11, with adding a NASCAR race to on top of pre-existing 10. And so, I'd like you to talk about that a little further. But also, where is the drive coming from, or who in the mix is saying that it has to remain 10, especially considering the added NASCAR race, which will be double or triple the size in scope all around of magnitude of any existing event at the Speedway.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bergeron. The 11 number actually came from misinformation. We were under the impression, or under the understanding, I should say, that there were 11 events. When we learned that the current contract has 10, we agreed that we would make sure that the number of events stayed at 10. That's including the proposed NASCAR weekend. And then as far as number of dates, it's a significant reduction from what it's been in years past. And we're willing to continue to operate within those limits. That would continue to allow for local racing, as well as the regional and national events that we've discussed.
And regarding track rentals, one correction I'd like to make there is candidly the only reason that remains 25 is because of COVID and limits on amending our contracts. As I know you and I have talked about, and I talk about at every single meeting, that number needs to decrease. But my understanding from getting information is that those track rental dates aren't really for use by you guys, by Bristol. It's more those are going to be utilized by local racers. Is that correct?
The 25 dates that are discussed now in your contract are typically used as test dates for local racing.
Right.
If I'm following your question correctly.
Yeah, and so, but in the future, the test dates, my understanding, it had been relayed to me that Bristol doesn't really have a use for test dates generally.
There would be some tied to very minimal, maybe one tied to kind of a NASCAR, that level event. It's not something that's typically done. There would be maybe one or two. There would probably be a tire test of some sort attached to that event, and then another maybe open test date for some of the teams. And then the others, would be tied to those regional events that have historically been there, and then local racing.
We had corresponded a little bit. I forwarded some questions to you about revenue assumptions. I had looked at the fiscal note that attaches to the state legislation that's pending regarding sales tax. And what the piece I didn't get out of your response was, is that fiscal note based on 10 events?
We don't know. As I said in the note, we didn't provide any information on the projected future revenue.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that maybe this is a question for Laura. I want to know where the legislature is getting those revenue assumptions from. If Mr. Caldwell and his folks don't know, I don't know if Mr. Weaver knows. I don't know. I don't know who is who and what and where.
Commissioner Bergeron, we were told that they made those assumptions based upon looking at the website with existing dates and from what they understood on projected new dates.
Okay.
That's what we were told.
Okay.
Commissioner Bergeron, can I add a question about that legislation? What is the timeline that we're looking at for that, Mr. Caldwell? When would that potentially pass?
It would be within the next 30 days.
Okay.
We think that's really up to the state, but that would be my best guess on that.
On a related note related to the legislature, I had asked another question forwarded to you. This was based on Councilman at Large Mendez had recently tweeted and given some interviews, and what he had said in those was that he had let the Cooper administration know that for economic development legislation that might come to council this year, a threshold issue for Councilman Mendez would be whether the company involved had publicly worked against the state's proposed anti-LGBT legislation. As I think we're all aware, there are several hateful, disgusting pieces of legislation pending before the state legislature this year. Most notably, one in really relevant here, HB 1182, which is a really discriminatory bill addressing embarrassing, humiliating signage outside restrooms in public facilities. And I had asked you, Mr. Caldwell, about what in anticipation of all the work we're doing at the Fair Board, and then the baseline that Councilman Mendez has reflected for council approval about what Bristol has done to oppose and make clear its opposition to all of the terrible legislation that's coming out of the legislature in that regard. And you provided some initial comments about inclusivity, which is great, but kind of looking for more clear opposition to that. And the reason I ask, and I have a follow-up question on risk, back in North Carolina, when there was a similarly hateful bathroom bill, NASCAR came out very publicly against that legislation. And when you have like a NASCAR coming out against, when you have things like the NCAA coming out yesterday saying it's not going to allow championship events in places that aren't free of discrimination, there's a risk there. What I'm looking at is the long term. If the legislature keeps passing horrific legislation, there's a risk to events being scheduled here, and that's why I asked that question. So, can you talk a little bit about what Bristol has done to as a very public entity in this state, and hoping to do business in a city, Nashville, that does not accept this kind of hate from the legislature? What you've done to oppose that legislation and make it clear?
Yeah, thank you. As it relates to Councilmember Mendez's letter, as I understand it, his request was that companies not remain on the sidelines. And we've not remained on the sidelines. We've had conversations with legislators. We are also working closely with our friend Councilman Young on ways that we can make sure we're always being inclusive in the way we operate and we put on events. And we will continue to do that. We've also had representatives that we're reaching out to the LGBTQ chamber to make sure that we fully understand all of the legislation and learn more on ways that we can address some of those.
Well, on that point, that's a great segue, because I'm looking at the Nashville LGBT Chamber's open letter addressing all of the discriminatory legislation that the Tennessee legislature is proposing, and among the signers, supporting or opposing that legislation is Nashville Soccer Club, another one of our one of our existing stakeholders on the fairgrounds, and I commend Nashville Soccer Club for signing that. I would really like to see Bristol sign that, and I'd like to see Bristol sign that immediately, and or Speedway Motorsports, to make clear that you publicly are taking a stand in opposing it, most notably opposing that restroom signage bill, which very much impacts public facilities like the new Speedway facility we'd be constructing here.
Yeah, thanks. As I mentioned, we're in conversations around what other steps will be taken.
Okay. Okay, well, and so my next question, and this is where it gets to, it comes to financial risk. You talked about financial risk and how Bristol's going to be taking this on, and taking on a greater amount of risk. And well, the risk I see related to my previous question is the loss of NASCAR events in the state of Tennessee as a result of ever more repugnant legislation passed by the state legislature. And so when we talk about risk of this project, and we were talking about the financial guarantees a lot, this is a perfect example of why I think that Bristol Motor Speedway must take on and guarantee all debt obligations based on the revenue figures, based on the revenue it generates from its events. And so, where are we with Bristol? I mean, has Bristol committed to guaranteeing the debt for the new Speedway facility?
We're in those conversations with the city right now, as far as commitments to debt and commitments to any overrun, and haven't come to terms yet on those.
Okay. One final question from me, which is regarding, I guess, the topic of community partnerships that you've mentioned. I know there's some stuff coming down the pipe, but I've gotten some feedback that indicates you've made some comments that you will not be entering into a community benefits agreement with the community to sort of covenant as to sound limits, curfews, limits on events, other ways to limit community impact. Is it true that Bristol is not going to enter into such a community benefits agreement?
I don't know who said that. Where did you hear that?
I heard that feedback from during the NOTE meeting.
No, that's inaccurate. I mean, we have made repeated comments that we would be willing to make agreements with the community on ways that we're going to impact the community and in a positive manner.
Okay, so that does that mean actual sound limits, curfews, things like that, or does that mean charitable contributions to area nonprofits, or both?
It's going to mean a combination of things.
Okay. Including
yes, I mean it includes all those things that you just listed on what ways we're going to work with the community to make sure, as I've talked with you several times about Speedway Children's Charities and our commitment to children in the markets that we do business. But then there's also, I mean, it would be part of a community agreement, but it would really be an agreement. Again, this facility belongs to the city, and we would be working in concert with you guys. So those commitments to addressing sound mitigation and limits on events, I mean, those are going to be in an agreement that we have with the Fair Board.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Chairwoman McNally, this is Commissioner Hemmer.
Go for it.
Thank you, Jerry, for your comments and presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you again for committing to do a robust public engagement session at our board meeting next month. I think that'll be helpful to the public, as you've heard, pretty interested in learning more and having a open dialogue. And then lastly, I would just say I would, from a board perspective, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, as well as Metro, probably specifically Metro Finance, and helping the board understand the financial impact of this proposal and how it affects the board's budgets and related financial arrangements associated with such. I think there's a lot of details associated with that, and I see you're on, Mr. Phillips, and I'm hoping we can get a little more information and work, hopefully work alongside Laura and our chairwoman to provide some of that information in working sessions and share with the board next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Weiner, do you have any questions for?
Actually, yes, I do.
Great.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Jerry, I can't thank you enough for all the work that everybody is putting in to this. Laura, Aaron Yeoman's job, just so much work. And I know that this is still a work in progress and that, we can't really hear what you have in mind until you have that brought to fruition and everything is provided to us in May. To that point, I just want to make sure, and I've mentioned this to one of the folks in your sphere, that I would really think it important to show us a sound propagation map from the sound source. And I would want to know that Wedgwood, Houston, downtown, the immediate area of the fairgrounds is all included in that map so that the residents, the Fair Board commissioners can see exactly what happens to sound as it propagates away from the sound source. And it will really show folks how far you have to be to hear at the levels that are being presented. I know that from my history as an audiologist and some of the sound work that I've been involved in, I don't think that everybody has a really good handle on how that works. And so I think that would be a big piece of this. And my hope is that you'll be putting that forward. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, I have to agree with my co-commissioners and that we really need to see the finance plan insofar as how it's going to affect the budget. And then for me, I want to make sure that we are dealing with all of our lessees appropriately, consistently. I don't want to see that we've got one group leasing from the property, but yet another group gets a different deal. So I would like to see us as consistent as possible because I think that that's only fair, not only to the Fair Board and to the other people that are leasing the property, but most importantly to the taxpayers. At this point, I'm not going to pontificate any further. I'm not going to say anything else because I want to hear all the information in a concise plan when it's provided to everybody in May. And I look forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And we will be providing that sound map and look forward to working more closely with you on that.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions from board members before we move on to public engagement? Okay, great. So I think we all agree that this timeline is aggressive, and we are working in good faith to try to work within those limitations. But that is secondary to securing a deal that works financially for the city and for the property, and coming to terms with a deal that satisfies the concerns and wants of the citizens of the neighborhood and of Greater Nashville. Laura and I have been working really hard with many stakeholders and all the parties involved, and are going to continue to do so as we embark on public engagement. And I believe that the other board members have had a chance to look at our tentative plan for public engagement, but this is our first time to be able to actually discuss it. So I want to emphasize that while I'm eager to get this first public meeting on the calendar, the subsequent plan is subject to change based on a myriad of factors, including the thoughts and wishes of this board, who I can't talk to any other time than right now. So I just want to talk through, like I said, I think you guys have seen it. I just want to talk through what we've got right now. And Laura, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me if I'm forgetting anything. But right now, as we have it listed, the first public meeting that we're considering is May 11th at 5 p.m. at MCC, because we won't have access to our buildings yet. So that will be a public presentation from BMS, as well as other parties with information that's crucial to structuring this deal. We can discuss further who all we want to hear from in that presentation. But then the biggest part of that is that open public comment time. So we'll have sort of a high level overview of what the project looks like, and then open public comment, which is is a different format than our typical meeting. But we are also exploring the possibility, we've been talking to Mr. Dickerson about the possibility of sort of after that's over, rolling into our regular meeting so that we can have further discussion about it. It would obviously still be open to the public, but it would be our regular format time if the board is willing to do that all in one fell swoop. And I'm totally open to discussion there. We did look into the possibility of having this be a hybrid in-person and virtual meeting because there are definitely going to be people who don't feel comfortable in person yet. But it looks like with the expiration of the governor's executive order at the end of this month, that our hands are sort of tied there, and likely this will just be an in-person meeting. So that's the May 11th meeting. The subsequent meeting after that, and this is tentative because we'll need the structure of a deal to be able to move forward on this, would be, so we'll assess, basically, I think we might have to call a special meeting to assess where we stand in between, so after our May 11th meeting, so that we can talk as a board and figure out next steps. But right now, as we have it, there would be a June 8th meeting, likely at 5 p.m. again, that's open to the public, where the deal draft will be presented to the public, and the public will have time for input. And then we're being asked to have a Fair Board meeting on July 12th to consider that contract according to their timeline. So that's where we stand at the moment. I want to throw that out to board members to give feedback or thoughts. Or also to open it up to Laura in case I missed anything.
Commissioner or Chairwoman McNally, did you say July 12th?
Yes.
Is that a normal meeting or a special call meeting?
It could be either. Our typical meeting is on Tuesday, but because of the legislative timeline that BMS is looking at, they requested that we have it a day early. So that is open for discussion.
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I can kick off on this. My concern is, there is a goal to, by BMS that they are underway with, and I commend them for that, to engage with all these community groups and complete that before May 11th, when the actual plan, more specifics will be presented. And then that would be followed a month later by a draft contract. And I think my concern there is that feels condensed. The community groups, aren't, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but at the moment they're not getting the clear, full details, right? They're getting, a broad presentation and some assurances that everything, that from BMS's perspective, they think nothing is going to demonstrably change. I think I disagree with that, and I think the community does. But with this new Speedway, but so I'm concerned about the notion that we're going to unveil. There will be an unveiling of the specifics at this public meeting May 11th, and then it'll just be a month until we get to contract, and it sort of feels almost like a fait accompli a little bit. And I'm not clear why this isn't a longer period after that for more public input, and that I understand that there are goals here and stuff, but the more I dig in on this timeline of urgency, I mean, we need to be honest here. There's not going to be a NASCAR race at the Speedway in 2022. There's not. There's no way that construction upon basically an entirely brand new Speedway facility, is going to be complete between late summer 2021 and in time for 2022. And I think we need to be honest about that. That's my discomfort. I feel like that's creating false pressure here. And I would be a lot more comfortable if we were looking at, the plan being unveiled May 11th, having multiple sort of public opportunities between May and June, and then maybe we have a draft contract presentation in July, and then we have contract consideration in August or September. that feels a lot more like the soccer discussions, and frankly, that's a lot more condensed still. But that's that, and we can talk about this more in community considerations. The reason I feel that way is I want the board to know I had not anticipated how negative the public response would be on this. For all the emails that we all get from somebody, I'm getting 10 times that many calls and emails and texts from people who I've never talked about the fairgrounds with, neighbors I know, who are furious. I had not anticipated the amount of fury that would come for the public on this presentation. And so that's really driving my concern that we need to have more robust public engagement after we have the full details of the plan presented.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Bergeron. And that's why I want to emphasize that this plan is tentative. I want the May 11th meeting to happen no matter what. It's time to have open public engagement. And I think that meeting will inform the timeline. And I think everyone will see that. So I'm looking forward to that. But I just want to assure you that I agree that we're in a seemingly we're in a time crunch that feels uncomfortable and in some ways unrealistic. And so I agree with you on that. And but I do think that we move forward with May 11th. That's my opinion. I think it's time to have an open forum to hear from everyone.
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I agree with that concept. Thank you. And I think that's a really good point. I agree about the May 11th. I do think it's an important sort of step forward to be taken. It's agreed about what happens after that. And I'm of the opinion that there's going to need to be a lot more opportunity for public feedback and input, maybe even workshops like we did for soccer after May 11th over the course of May, June, time frame. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll know more about state legislation by then. Potentially we'll know more about, we'll hopefully have designs to look at that will inform the financial structure. That we'll have some things come into focus by May 11th that will inform the rest of the timeline. That's sort of where my head's at. Do any other board members have thoughts?
Yes, Chair, this is Commissioner Weiner. I'm going to reiterate, we don't have enough information at this point to solidify a timeline until we have all of the information in front of us. I understand from what you shared that we would have a May meeting, community engagement, that's essential, I agree. A June meeting, more community engagement, individual group meetings, that's all essential. I want to add, though, that once the plan is baked and we have something concrete that will be presented to us to vote on, I want to make sure that the community has had ample opportunity to see that and to give us feedback prior to a vote. When we did this with MLS, obviously I was more involved on the council side than I was on the Fair Board side. And so I don't know specifically what that time frame was and what that pattern was, if you will, for community engagement. I would love it if somebody could fill me in on that, because as I shared, we need to be consistent in the way we treat anything on this property. And I think this speaks to that. Thank you.
Commissioner McAnally, Chairwoman McAnally, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Commissioner Emmer. No, I think I'm tracking with my fellow commissioners, and I think we're all just anxious and, not having all the details as well as the public at large. It creates a lot of anxiety around these discussions, and but at the end of the day, I think the mayor has proposed this aggressive schedule, and we need to do our best to try to stick through that. I think having at least having that information and starting point in May will help us at least get our heads around the what the actual schedule should be after that, and in the public engagement and et cetera that goes along with that. But it's hard sitting here today with knowing there's several missing pieces here to try to think through all that out. But again, I'm putting my faith in the the administration and the Bristol organization that they're putting forth a complete picture for us to do that. And I'll also remind our fellow commissioners that while we did have robust conversations with the soccer team on that, when we as the board weren't comfortable with the deal, we kept meeting and we had special meetings. And so just because the schedule is set, doesn't mean that if we don't feel comfortable as a board that, XYZ hasn't happened, that we can't, to continue to have those further discussions and community engagement, et cetera. So I'm just going to take a wait and see approach and look to get the information, and then we can all make a joint decision on how we move forward at that point. But I think the chairwoman's goal of having that May meeting and starting that process at that point with a completed picture for us to discuss is the best kind of option for us to go forward with at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammer. I will add, I'm also very excited to see all of you in person for the first time in a very, very long time. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, thanks everybody. Let's circle back to Chief Swan. Are you with us? We'll move on to.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate everybody's patience. I don't know the technical difficulty I had earlier, but I could hear you guys, but you couldn't hear me, obviously. So thank you and good morning. I'm just really very excited to be able to be on the board to actually announce our phasing out of the sheltering business at the fairgrounds. As we talked last time, we wanted to make sure that we was very informative and transparent and making sure that our voice, of course, is heard, because I understood with Laura, sometimes being in the dark is definitely not a good place to be, and we were very committed to making sure that we would actually come on and talk about the business on hand. So the COVID-19 overflow shelter located at the Nashville Fairgrounds has started the process of closing as Metro Nashville Davidson County increases its vaccination levels, including among our homeless community. So the overflow shelter will be scheduled to be closed July 1st, depending upon the vaccination levels within Metro Davidson County. By that time, we should be at 50%. Right now, we're on a trend to actually get there a little quicker than at July, but we're putting it July 1st, and by that time, the community will be at 50%. And thanks to all the hard work at the health department and other community organizations, with vaccinations continuing to increase, it will be safe to begin shifting services found at the temporary shelter back to the community organizations that serve the homeless. While there will be a strong monitoring and for the next 3 months, but the fairgrounds, when they opened up, they were done to accomplish many objectives. Number one, it was to provide a place for people experiencing homelessness to have a shelter while awaiting the COVID-19 results, or to recover following the COVID-19 diagnosis. The fairground also acted as a place to allow people who was well, but also needed a place to allow them to provide a social distancing from others. This was done to help reduce the population in the city's primary homeless shelter, where social distancing and isolation, COVID-19 positive clients was increasingly difficulty. So we have went to a phase event. We started April 1st, where we closed the female shelter and brought them to the fairgrounds. And each month we will actually start reducing our numbers. Currently, we have 101 men at the shelter, 23 females, but we have 0 positive personnel. So that is a positive note, and to all the hard work that everyone's doing within Davidson County, it shows that it's working. So as we start our reducing, people still right now are able to stay in the shelters and as we start the phasing out. Now we know with the weather becoming better, warmer, attrition will help reduce that number as well. But as of July 1st, we will, as things work as planned, we will be able to go back to pre-COVID days as far as the shelter, as far as the fairgrounds. And we know that so many people enjoy the fairgrounds and miss the activities. Once the shelter operations cease, the Nashville Fairgrounds will need, and we were in discussion with Director Wormack, 6 to 8 weeks to completely go back to post days. And of course, they have to do some cleaning and some damage repair, and also some scheduled warranty work that due to the COVID that needs to take place. And of course, I'm sure Director Wormack will keep everybody up to speed with how long that will take. But the fairgrounds, it's been a great partnership, and working with Director Wormack and Renee Pratt from Social Services, a lot of great things has happened. In no small way have they helped combat COVID-19. Some of the things that's happened since March the 26th of 2020, over a year now, there were over 135,000 meals provided. They had snacks twice a day. People was provided case management. They had 76 personnel placed in housing. And then people were provided clothing assistance. They were provided rides. Individuals were able to sign up for food stamps assistance. And also, many people didn't have Social Security cards that was able to get that. And then people were provided employment assistance. So the Metro Public Health Department, Neighborhood Health, and St. Thomas Health continues to collectively and with an effort to be at 100% success to make sure that the homeless, as well as anyone else, to provide vaccinations. This will continue. And again, I just want to take my hat off to all the hard work that was done by so many individuals and organizations to make this a success. Dr. Wright, myself, and others, it's just been a great, I think, a venture as far as how we first started with the fairgrounds. We were such, people were a lot of doubt, but as the process worked itself out, we were able to, or the fairgrounds, social services and others were able to provide a great service to the city. So again, this great news, by July 1st, we're hoping to completely be out of the fairgrounds, and I'm sure that will be a welcome event for everyone to get the city back into the phase of getting back into a normal. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Swan. Any questions from the board?
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I have a quick question. Chief Swan, and I know we've heard a lot of information over the months on the shelter particulars, but have you been vaccinating within the shelter at the fairgrounds in real time? Have people been getting vaccinated there?
Yes, thank you, Bergeron. That's a great question. Absolutely. The health department has and will continue to provide the vaccination to the homeless community, but with a particular emphasis, not just the health department, but many organizations that are not only going to the fairgrounds, but to, of course, the Mission, Room at the Inn, and then known areas where shelters or camps for homeless are there. So there is a collective effort that's been made by many people to make sure that they are given the opportunity to be vaccinated. And if you notice, even with the Meharry, our relationship with them, we're having 3 different locations. It was at the at Meharry Center itself, site itself, and then Nissan Stadium and Murfreesboro Road, where you could go get tested for COVID-19. We're converting the Murfreesboro Road site into a vaccination center. So, and that started this week. So again, we're on a mission to make sure that everyone will be vaccinated, and especially our homeless community with being intentional there. So thank you.
Yeah, and I guess one follow-up question is just, and this is sort of very late-breaking recent news, but there's news this morning of some states pausing the Johnson & Johnson vaccine administration due to what I think is going to be really important. It looks like for the public to say is a very limited amount of on a percentage-wise basis of a blood clotting disorder, potentially in a very small percentage of people who receive it. And you may not have an answer to that today, but maybe Laura could follow up with us just to ensure if there is a pause on that. Will that in any way affect the closing timelines or the calculus there if the J&J vaccine ends up getting paused for a period of time in Tennessee? Maybe we get just some follow-up information between now and the next meeting if there is a change to the timeline because of that for any reason.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. I actually spoke with Dr. Wright earlier because just like you, this is sort of urgent but groundbreaking news, and the J&J, the hold on the J&J vaccination. And what it appears that there's like 6 individuals across the country, and it seems like it's more with females from ages 18 to 48, childbearing age, and they don't know what the correlation there is, if it's just clotting because of birth control. They're trying to figure that out. But for safety precautions, we are holding it as well, so there will be a pause there. Even we're going to, with mostly Pfizer, even with the converting the site on Murfreesboro Road, where we're doing the J&J, that's being converted as we speak to the Pfizer. And we're very blessed and fortunate and thankful that, even with the J&J vaccination that we did a few weeks ago, right now there's no known here in Nashville. So again, we don't know what that correlation is if it's with those 6 individuals with the blood clotting, other than the information I gave you earlier. But we will keep a close eye on that. But we're hoping that will not by any means delay, but we will keep you up to speed with it because, again, we have Pfizer. It's just the J&J was just more easy. Of course, it's one and done, but the Pfizer, it takes a 2-shot regimen. But we're well ahead of our plan as far as what population percentage of Davidson County to be vaccinated. So we're hoping for good, but we will definitely keep you guys up to speed with that, and hopefully that don't interfere with our plan with the Fairgrounds. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, this is Commissioner Weiner. I have a question for Chief Swan.
Yes, ma'am. So, Council, I was going to say Council Lady Weiner, but now you've got a new role, and congratulations on that. Good morning.
Should I have an identity crisis? I don't know how to be referred to.
No, listen, you're a friend of mine. That's for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, honey. So here's my 2 questions. You had mentioned before that you guys were offering assistance to the folks that were housed over there insofar as employment opportunities. So I wondered, how successful have those employment opportunities been? And then the second part of that question would be, how or what percentage of the folks that are there have been successful in being rehoused?
That's a great question. The data that I have, and I can get a little bit more in depth, and that'd be definitely with Renee Pratt for Social Services, but people placed in housing is 76 individuals, and individuals that was provided assistance as far as employment was 52. And then there will be a press release soon after this this call that Joseph Pleasant will be putting out. We'll have a little bit more in-depth detail than what I'm just speaking on now. But I think at the end of the day, Ms. Winter, the intentional services that were provided at that center at the fairgrounds, again, it was just it was just impeccable as far as you've seen all the work that was done. But again, the numbers that I have, and you would be able to get with social services to get a little bit more in depth. But I will release all that I have here because it shows the case management. Where it's 437 people placed in housing, 76. And then again, the provided a food stamps assistance, or those that signed up, I guess, that was able to get it was 38. 40 individuals were able to obtain their social security card. But again, employment was provided, it seems to be 52. And that could slightly change from where we was at maybe last week where I got all the numbers.
Yeah, I think I will get with Renee because I'd be curious to know from a percentage perspective how that compares to other efforts across the city just in a normal course of a year. And so I appreciate that information. That's just from when I was on the Homelessness Commission, I really see that what you guys did over there is substantial.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing, and hats off to them. I mean, it's a great work, and with the amazing thing about it, because it was such a new thing, where in suggestions to put them somewhere else, but we were really wanting to be able to have a more personal relationship and able to control that a little bit more. And with that, you were able to give those services at a better rate. And so again, just great work. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I want to open the floor up to Laura to add any thoughts there.
Thank you so much. It's Laura Womack. I just wanted to kind of talk about a little bit of the effort after the shelter is fully decommissioned and closed. Now, understand we have not sat down as a staff to talk about plans, but I know that, our vendors and our event promoters are very anxious to hear details about when we can start indoor events again. Again, without having a full staff meeting yet on how to accomplish that and to schedule warranty work and cleaning and repairs, our goal is obviously to open as soon as possible. We have always put out there that we have a 6 to 8 week window. I think that's I think we can get done sooner than that, but I also think it's fair to open earlier and not keep pushing dates back because we didn't get the work done. So I'm going to ask everybody just to be patient with us. I also think there's a big opportunity for us to phase in the buildings, get all the work done in one, and then get a building open as soon as possible once it is cleaned and repaired, and then, phase in the buildings. So I do see an opportunity for us to be open soon. Just again, asking everybody for their patience as we inspect the buildings once they are cleared out and, figure out the scope of the work that needs to be done.
Thank you so much, and thank you in advance to our staff and to you for all the hard work you're going to be doing on that. And thank you, Chief Swan, for everything that you've done and for being here with us today. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on? All right, great. Next up, we have event update. Laura, I'll kick it back to you.
Well, thank you. I gave you just a brief update on our desire to have an outdoor flea market in May, and now our potential reopening date after July 1st. has been discussed. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wallace. I believe he has sent out an updated event calendar, and I know he's been checking on health department applications for some of the events that are on the schedule. I will note that we had been talking about, and you had received a presentation in, I believe, January from Genevieve Lobb, who was interested in doing an outdoor concert series. That has since been canceled. I think there is a belief that, you know, as capacity levels increase and restrictions are loosened, that a lot of the artists are kind of holding out for larger venues and in a larger capacity. So it's a disappointing, because I think it can be just a really great, you know, neighborhood special concert series that we can do at the fairgrounds. However, we did talk when that was canceled, and we're both still very excited to pursue what we could possibly do in 2022 to bring a music series to Fair Park for the neighborhood and for our surrounding community. So I did want to update you on that, and I will turn it over to Scott to talk about some things that are coming up in April and May.
Thank you, Laura. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Good morning to everyone, and I want to first apologize for last month not being able to do an update. I myself suffered coronavirus, but I'm fine. Matter of fact, I feel better than I did before I had it. So again, I'd like to express my apology, and some of the board members are getting emails because I made a mistake in putting Molly's email wrong in my note that goes out when people email me. So I apologize for that, but we're caught up on our emails and we're ready to go. Wanted to just reiterate some of the things that's going to happen. Of course, you know, we have been in contact with the neighbors on some things. So and it's great meetings that we're having with them, letting them know what's happening. The first race is this weekend. And then the following weekend, we'll have the firefighters benefit concert that they came and did a presentation with you last month. And that concert is the second time we've done it. I don't believe I received not one complaint or call from the neighbors to be able to, that they heard any music. It's a very low key type of situation on a Saturday, and they're done way before curfew, like 9 or 8:30. So just to keep that, you all understanding that. We also are excited to have a truck show coming in next month, the second weekend in May. Also, the March of Dimes is doing they moved to us. They're doing their fundraiser on the track the following weekend. And so we're very excited about that. And like Laura mentioned earlier, that same weekend, tentatively, we're working on having a flea market. I want to just express to you also some events that we have that we're working on. Is we're trying to do things, you know, in decent and in order to try to still make revenue, but do some events that may not be as impactful. One is a parking event every Wednesday. And then we have some other folks talking about events coming that they would like to do. But of course, I let them know that I have to make a number of people happy, and one of them is the neighbors. And so we're really cognizant of how many outdoor events we're doing, especially if it's going to impact with noise pollution, with loud things and things like that. So we're trying to work hard. I'd like to express my appreciation to the staff being able to help out with some things. Of course, Molly Nightingale and Danny Reynolds, and also Bobby Burns, who works our parking. So we're working. We're excited to get back to work. A lot of our promoters are excited for us to get back to where we are. So we appreciate that. And if you have any questions, I'm open to some questions now.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott or Laura from the board?
Yes, Chairwoman McAnally. Thank you, Scott, for that thorough update. We appreciate it. I know you've got a lot on your plate, kind of getting things back up and going. I was curious if you thought about, or if we could put together some type of strategy around, you know, for targeting a July 1 open or phased opening, just you know, maybe an email to our, existing database of vendors, promoters, et cetera, just letting them know that that's our plan, so we can kind of help get the word out.
Yes, sir. Laura and I have been emailing back and forth ever since we will have something together later on today to send out. That would be comprehensive. We'll let them know. And again, it's depending on this July 1 date and all those things. So I'm assuming some things, but I don't want to put that out there of when we'll be able to open up and be able to have indoor events. Of course, we've always have gave the promoters and also the vendors for the flea market the opportunity to do outdoor while we're trying to get this done. So yeah, and I agree with you, Commissioner Hemmer, that we need to have some things sent out today, and then Laura's working on it and send it for us to send out to something today. So we're excited to get back open and be able to do the events. Also, I forgot to mention, Big Brothers and Big Sisters is working on that to do a graduation ceremony for them in one of the sheds. So we're excited to be able to have people like that to contact us that have been doing great work for many, many years to be able to come to the fairgrounds and have things on our facility. So we're excited about that then as well.
That's great. I'm such a big fan of theirs. I have a big sister, and it's been a huge part of my life. I'm happy to hear that. Any other questions for Mr. Wallace? All right, great. Thank you for everything, and we'll move on now to community impact discussion. Laura?
So we decided, everyone, it's Laura Womack. I always forget to announce myself. We had put this on the agenda last month, had decided that it would be kind of a standing agenda item so that, you know, as it relates to our lessees, our potential partnerships, but I think Neighborhood Impact Advisory Committee, et cetera, we decided to keep it on here just to, you know, be able to have the board freely discuss those types of issues, anything that they are hearing on email or during public comment that they would want to have an open discussion on. So I'll kind of turn it over to you and to the other commissioners if there's anything specific that they've heard in the last month that needs addressing.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, anything you'd like to discuss?
Hey, this is Commissioner Bergeron. I do have a couple things that would fit here. One, I wanted to thank Laura for sending around, I think that was in response to Commissioner Wiener's request, the summary sheet that sort of summarizes where we have gone insofar as incorporating community impact considerations into various agreements. So I appreciate Laura pulling all that together for the board to have handy. You know, and I'll try to be brief. I know this meeting has gone very long, but as you sort of look at those, and some of those are a little closer to me because I've been of my involvement in negotiating the last few Speedway contracts in particular. You know, I just reiterate again something I mentioned earlier, which is I hadn't anticipated the amount of public outcry I would be receiving as we talk about a new Speedway facility, and so I would just encourage the board to take a hard look at sort of the evolving nature of the Speedway relationship, getting things in hand with things that were done for a long time for no good reason. And I've alluded to sort of an ugly past at some activities at the Speedway where it was sort of a playground for some of Nashville at the expense of others. And so, you know, when I talk about things as community impact in the framework of where we are now, you know, I'm sensing a sort of tension here. And it's between local racing and NASCAR. You know, and we're going to have this discussion eventually, which is that there are some things with local racing, namely track rentals, which do not make money and are done for no good reason. They were done basically because former promoters like to be freely run around the track whenever they wanted. And we're at this point now where we're talking about maintaining maybe 10 events while becoming a NASCAR track. And I think we need to have a real discussion about, we can't be two tracks. We can't be a local racing track or three tracks, a local racing track, a regional racing track, and a NASCAR track. I think that that's not fair to the community. And so from a community impact perspective, adding a NASCAR race is going to have to change the local racing aspect, because that's the choice that's been made here. You know, the mayor's office has decided to take up Bristol on their proposal. We're going to look at finding a way to become this new speedway with a NASCAR track, but that's going to affect what we've done before, unfortunately. You know, we're not choosing to take on $15 million to do renovations and maintain a local track. We're becoming a new track. And so, you know, I just, as you look at I just highlight the things I've been saying. There is not room for 10 events with a NASCAR race. There's not. It's not fair to the community, and there certainly isn't room for 25 track rentals anymore. Not anywhere close to that. The community impact is too high. And so I just would highlight that again for the board to consider as we head into this next phase. One final note, which is an item I raised, and I didn't ask Mr. Caldwell about it, but he provided me some information. The Bristol Motor Speedway in Bristol, Tennessee recently had a dirt track kind of event weekend, and they ran into a lot of rain, and that ultimately led to some of the races being held on Monday. And that it's been communicated to me that that's exceedingly rare, but that's just another example of something we need to be talking about here. If there were ever a rain out weekend with NASCAR, rainouts that happen now at the track are canceled. If there's a race that doesn't happen over the weekend, it's canceled. I would imagine NASCAR is not going to want to cancel a race, and they would be looking to run it on a Monday like they do in other places. Well, that carries enormous community impact considerations. I mean, just imagine what running a race at 1 p.m. on a Monday with school and people going to work, and what that would mean. All that is just to say, there are tons of community impact considerations we need to be thinking about every single minute here, especially as we enter into this phase. It's really complicated, and it just goes back to needing, you know, a really good longer timeline to work through them all. So I appreciate everyone listening at this time, and I really appreciate having community impact being a subject at every meeting, because it needs to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bergeron. Any other commissioners have anything they'd like to add? All right, great. We'll move on now to new business. Our only agenda item for new business is slate of Board of Fair Commissioners. So it's customary for this board to designate a slate for chair and vice chair at our April meetings so that we can vote for them in June. However, we didn't do that last year because of the pandemic. We wound up doing the slate and the vote in the same month. So Alex, you may have to guide us here. Does someone propose a slate and then we vote on it? Is that how this works?
Yeah, this is Alex Dickerson with Metro Legal. Yeah, I think that would be appropriate for you all to have a discussion at this point, and then someone could propose a slate for you to vote on later on in the year if you want to stick by what it is you did previously to last year. But yeah, now would be the point where you have a discussion, and a vote would then take place at I believe you said it was the September meeting is what it traditionally is done.
Is it? I think we did it in September this year, but in the past it's been June, I believe. Is that right, Laura? Or Alex?
I defer to Laura on this. I think Laura.
That is, yeah, this is Laura. That is correct. And I believe it's actually stated in the bylaws that we vote in June. We suspended the rules last year, as you referred to our September meeting. So this is getting us back on schedule as defined in our bylaws.
So ignore the September part, you'd be voting in June.
Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Any thoughts from the board?
Chairwoman McNally, thank Commissioner Hemmer.
Go for it.
Yeah, I would make a motion. We would keep our same slate of officers and have Commissioner Aaron McAnally be our chair and Commissioner Jason Bergeron be our vice chair.
Do we have a second? I'll second that for discussion. Any discussion? Barry, I see you just went off mute if you have something to add.
And this is Commissioner Hammer, and this is just to put the slate up for a future vote, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just a slate, so we can change it if something happens. Well, I'll add that I would be more than happy to serve. I really enjoyed my last however many months it's been since September. So I would be happy to serve and honored. Commissioner Weiner, do you have anything you'd like to add, or Jason?
No, I don't. I was going to second it earlier, but I hit the button too quick. Too late. Sorry.
Commissioner Bergeron?
This is Commissioner Bergeron. I'm happy to continue to serve and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll take a roll call vote on the slate of officers to be voted on in June, with me as chair and Jason as vice chair, just so Christy has all the information. Okay, we'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Hemmer?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiner?
Aye.
Commissioner Bergeron?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. Thank you, everyone. I think that's the last thing we have for the day. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Yeah, I just had a question about our ethics training afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Should we stay on, or what should we do?
Yes, I believe we're staying on, but let's discuss that after we close the meeting. Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so you seconded that, right?
I don't know, but it's Commissioner Hammer and I second. We adjourn.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Hemmer?
Aye.
Commissioner Bergeron?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiner?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. Thank you all so much. And commissioners will stay on for ethics training. See you all. Thank you. We'll see you in May.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye.
If I could have the ball passed to me so I can use it for the PowerPoint, Andre. Thank you.
Do my co-commissioners need a brief respite? I could use 2 minutes if that's okay.
Perfect. Give me time to set it up.
Awesome.
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I'm back and ready when everyone else is.
Commissioner Bergeron and Commissioner Hammer, just let me know when you're on and we'll start.
Commissioner Hammer, I'm on.
Commissioner Bergeron, present.
Okay, here we go.
A lot of attendees still on the line. I just didn't know if that was
Mr. Weaver Bale, I thought